right, welcome back for another episode of Streaming Clouds. It's been a while, but we're here. All right, we made it. Kev, good to see you.
Yeah,
Jonah,
man. Good to see you as
welcome.
well. I
Yes.
like I like the new intro. That was quite sophisticated, I would say.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Hi, Kevin. Hi, Robin. And yes, hi, Michael. Yes. Great to see you again. It's been a while since I was in streaming clouds. Last time was about the first episode, I remember. We did
That's
talk about a
right.
lot.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
Now I'm back.
we loved you so much that we got you back, right, as like an
Yes.
anchor on the show, right? So
Yes.
everybody, please warm welcome out in the community feeds for Jonah joining the squad.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Yes. Glad to be part of the Streaming Clouds team and help with the community work. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Awesome. All
Um,
right.
Go through it.
Yeah, shall we?
Yeah.
Yes.
So today is about 90 days of DevOps, and who better than the creator himself to have us explain, what it's about, run us through the whole, the whole creation, basically. So, Michael, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, cheers all. Thanks for having me. And I think, to that point is I started off this project, 90 Days of DevOps in 2022, and if you've done fitness challenges or anything like that, you've probably noticed that from January the 1st to March the 31st is exactly 90 days. It's the first quarter of the year. And then I decided to put that into works, and we'll get into a bit more about what the project is. But yeah, it's basically started off as 90, or every day I wrote a blog post, and we'll talk about what that is. But I think the most important part is my background is around that infrastructure and operations, servers, Exchange servers, virtual machines, storage. That's my background, right? So when this whole DevOps craze started, and it started many years ago, it wasn't 2022, and it was way before that. I think 2009 was like the first time we heard anything about the terminology DevOps as a bit of a buzzword. I was merely patching physical servers back then and learning the world of virtualization. And I think a lot of us around that infrastructure space kind of left that DevOps piece, that automation, maybe infrastructure as code, and we like maybe started dabbling in some of it, but we thought, oh, we're not developers, or we basically took the mick out of DevOps being like you had to have massive beards. I did have a massive beard a few years ago, but it wasn't. We took it maybe not for granted, but we took it as, oh, it's just a fad. It's just another buzzword. And I think over the pandemic, over the lockdown that we had, I feel like DevOps actually found its time and place in the industry, where we were trying to do more with less. We also had a lot more time on our hand to tinker around with stuff. And that's when I came up with the idea. In fact, the spoiler alert here is that it was around October in 2021. Obviously, we're in lockdown, just coming up to Christmas. In the UK, we were told that we weren't going to have Christmas. We were literally going to be locked down. We weren't going to be allowed out. So what do you do then? You go and write a blog post on this new world that I'd been like entrenched in around DevOps and cloud and everything around that world. And I wrote a blog, and it was, so you want to learn DevOps, and you'll find it on Kasten.io. And it's basically the content, or it's the 12, 13 topics that I cover in that first 90 days of DevOps. Which I will finally show you the repo any second. But and the whole point of it was just learning a little bit about a lot of things, because DevOps isn't just we're going to go, where do I buy my DevOps from? There's so many factors to it. You have to learn. You have to kind of be a jack of all trades or a master of all as well. So I think what I was trying to do was to fill in some of those gaps of, like, I'd played around with Terraform, I'd played around with Ansible, I'd done a lot around Linux and networking, but I hadn't done so much around CI/CD pipelines, and I kept on hearing that term CI/CD all in one, and it's a bugbear of mine now that I understand that CI can be one thing and CD can be a completely different tool. They don't necessarily have to live together. They can be two separate entities to that. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of a background. So in 2022, we started, I wrote, it was 110,000 words, 90 blog posts, basically, all living on GitHub. Another key aspect of what I was trying to achieve was it was meant to be accessible and free for everyone, in that the tool, so each module that we do has a big picture. So what is Git, like, for as an example, and then it will touch on some of the Git-based services that you might have access to, a bit of theory type thing, and then we get a hands-on. I want to touch. I want to actually use some of this stuff and show some of the commands or get hands-on. So that accessibility had to be, well, not everyone has a license to VMware workstations, so I had to use something like VirtualBox to achieve that, or Terraform at the time was an open source project that we could all use. I mean, it still is for us in this instance. So that business license that they've changed without completely curving the road on this show. For practitioners and technologists, Terraform hasn't changed. We can still do what we've done, but then there's other forks in the road that we can go after there as well. But the premise of it is that everything's free and accessible. So regardless of where you are in the world, what your state of like accessibility is, you're going to have the ability to use and walk through this the different modules that I started off with. Yeah, and then that's progressed into 2023, which is this year, is where I went out to my friends in that area and we did another 12, 13 topics on security and stuff that we left behind that we didn't do in that first. So it went from just my perspective to 12 of my friends in the community also helping. And we've got a bigger story coming in 2024 where it's going to be 90 sessions from 90 different people in the community, which there's a call for papers out at the moment. I'll make sure there's links and everything available somewhere before the end of the show. So that's a very long-winded introduction to the project. I don't know if you want to show.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say how relatable it is, because I was one of those infra people and now I'm a developer, basically.
There you go.
The opposite is for me. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I take my hat off to anyone that's done exchange work in the past as well. That brings on PTSD.
It's good to talk about it though, Kev.
Oh,
got to talk about this stuff.
Don't talk.
Otherwise, it just gets buried somewhere.
But you know, learning stuff like Git, right? Like, you have to learn that by yourself. Like, people will just say, go and commit some code, right? You know, what's Azure DevOps? What's GitHub? Like you said, the two tools, right? I'm trying to get my head around, like, writing manifest files or whatever it is, right? So,
as well, yeah. And there is no, I guess, so how this started was a structured way of me learning. I was writing my own notes down, and then suddenly these stars started to like click up and people were sharing it online and across Twitter, and I'm like, oh, I did that. That's like one of my blog posts, if you will. But really, it just started out as my notes. Terrible notes as well, I might add, in that the biggest contributions that I've had to the repo has been people fixing my spelling mistakes. Great first time issues for people just starting to learn, right? But it started to gain massive traction, and I think if I was to pinpoint what that was, is that there isn't any structure out there. There wasn't any structure out there to say, go and learn this. And we've got this weird situation in the world even today around DevOps engineers. And like, so Kev could be a DevOps engineer, I could be a DevOps engineer, so could Robin, Jonah, and we're all at 4 different companies, but our roles and responsibilities are completely different. Because a DevOps engineer could just be, oh, he's the guy that does all the Linux stuff. Oh, he's the guy that builds up the infrastructure, builds up the virtual machines for the developers to use. Whereas it could be that Robin's doing all the CI/CD pipeline and actually releasing the code out to their customers. It's just so much difference around that. And I think we're trying to fix that with terminology around platform engineering and stuff like that. I think that actually resonates a little bit better. I don't necessarily agree with the marketing team behind bringing out platform engineering and saying DevOps is dead, because DevOps should have always been and never been. It should have never been a position. I mean, a lot of people used it to get some more money, and fair play to them for that. But really, DevOps is about the principles and the processes that we use to do something, to make our life easier. It's about automation. There should never have been that term DevOps engineer, in my opinion. But I'm not knocking anyone that made an extra buck from just changing their title. But they did the same thing. So yeah, that's my take on that, without offending too many people.
I want to react on that because first I want to react about Kevin. I've been working as a developer for the past years, and then I switched 50-50 developer and cloud DevOps engineer, and I use that title because it's just been there. And then I did actually take the AZ400 certification, of course. So I'm not offended, Michael, about what you said. It's just like how they do sit in the position. But I do completely agree with you that DevOps is not a position. It's how we do the work that we do, and it can be a variation of different things to help build the team.
Yeah, don't get me wrong either. I think it's better to be called a DevOps engineer than a systems administrator that is keeping the lights on and patching and doing everything manually. I think I would much prefer people to be called a DevOps engineer if they're automating that process and being closer to the developer. Kev, I don't know if you've got anything to add on that, as you've kind of lived in both worlds.
I have, yeah. So in 2016, I got put in within I sort of reported into a Scrum Master, which blew my head.
Yeah.
Right? Completely apart, right? Because then we started having scrums and everything else, right? And, building out our Kanban boards and all that beautiful stuff. But then I started with another company, and I basically got placed to serve the developers. And I had to keep them not in check. That's not the right word, right? But like secure, costs not going out the window, that kind of thing, right? Sort of trying to keep up with them. So I had to become part of the process. So if we think about like a pipeline and its stages, I had to become part of the stage, right? And, because they just turn up and go, read about this tool at the weekend, I want to use it, right? Kind of thing. And then it was using the same tools as them as well, right? Like VS Code and extensions. I remember the first time I looked at VS Code and I was like, is this like Notepad? What's going on here, right? All that kind of good stuff. So it's a huge transition, right? It really is.
Yeah, massively. And just, yeah, the tooling, that's a real thing as well, is that, well, you can get into the Nano versus Vim and versus VS Code as your editor, and the deeper the developer, the deeper the arts are when it comes to Neo Vim and other dark arts that they perform in there. But I think, yeah, the whole point of this for me was to get hands on, and I'm extremely lucky and privileged to be able to, that my company see the benefit in helping the community in this fashion. Like, there is literally, in fact, as we go through the repo, you'll see the last 7 days are literally on storing and protecting data. So I work for Veeam Software. We focus on backing up stuff. There's very little about backup in here, because from a DevOps point of view, are you responsible for the data? Probably not. Are you going to be in the future? Probably, because data is going to be massively important to that pipeline, to that development cycle. And I sure as hell am pretty confident that a developer doesn't care too much about the data unless they're leveraging it. And that's going to be clean data and stuff like that. Again, Kev, I don't know if you've got a point to say on that from someone that was in that infrastructure side where data was probably your responsibility, and you have a PTSD around that, to now being a developer where actually these are some of the things that you could potentially let drop off the shoulder type thing. The same as observability, right?
Oh, no, I still do it, but I use the phrase creating a walled garden, right? So it's all beautiful with roses and flowers, right? And it's very majestic, but actually it's a security fortress underneath, right? So it's about building it secure. Like you said, it's all about priorities. Everyone has different priorities, right? As part of that process. I don't know, Jonah, do you see that from your point of view? Like, Jonah's more ingrained, right, as being a developer.
Yes, yes. That's an interesting question. I do agree with you that security is a very important foundation in terms of like we have this term called DevSecOps. The security of our infrastructure applications already starts during the development, and of course, when I was a developer, or I still am coding actually. So as a developer, if I put on my developer hat, I have to think about these things as well, making sure that the connection strings are not exposed to the public. And then when you come to the Azure DevOps or the pipeline to the CI/CD part in releasing it, you also have to do the code scanning and making sure those are not deployed accidentally to production. And what I like about my role or having this developer background is that it allows me to relate to the developers at the same time while I'm doing my DevOps work. And I really love the way of communication and collaboration between teams, because the more I understand the developer, I understand the need of the business, since I worked as a customer service also. And the communication part, which is my soft skills, it really creates a great dynamic and synergy in the way I work, and I'm loving it. And if you need inspiration, Kevin, I can definitely also help you or inspire you in that arena.
You touched on a really great point there. Understanding each other and having respect for each other's work and each other's specialism, if that makes sense, right? So I started developing a couple of years ago, not to be able to develop a fully blown application, but more to understand the devs that I'm currently working with, right? Even as a cloud architect, you have to deal with both sides of the fence, basically, right? Ideally, there's no fence, but in most organizations, you still have that fence in the middle between infrastructure and app development. And I usually say, why are we, from platform engineering perspective, why are we trying to create all this complexity and enable our developers? Why they don't just learn Terraform, right? But that's really easy from my perspective to say. But if you then look at their workloads and all the libraries and the software and everything that they work with, then you understand that they don't want any, they don't need something else to worry about and something else to think about, right? They already have to manage that workload, basically, or that cognitive load. So before we share a screen, Michael, shall we dive into one of the comments, like a question from the audience?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So John, good to see you and good to have you back. So John asked, how do you make that change, and what was the process like for you?
I think this goes back to, so I've been at Veeam Software, and I've been a technologist there. I started off as an SE, focusing on backup and recovery of data, mostly around virtualization. 8.5 years ago, I've been at this company, right? I'm in the office of the CTO now. I have been for the last 5-6 years, and my focus is around, a lot of it is around mergers and acquisitions as well. So looking into companies that we should potentially look to partner or buy or acquire, that will allow us to build out our portfolio. And that's a long way of saying is that I was kind of given the freedom to go and learn this, but we acquired a company called Kasten that have a product called Casting K10 that focuses on Kubernetes backup. And as you may or may not be aware, Kubernetes is very focused across that app developer world. It's just starting to get more over to the infrastructure people, because people can just put a credit card in and build up an EKS cluster or AKS cluster very easily and get to where they need to be. And the infrastructure guys that I'm speaking to are unaware that anything's happening at the moment, but they're starting to attend things like KubeCon and Kubernetes community days, and we're starting to see them. So 2 years ago, I was like, they called it parachuting in to go and make noise. Go and make noise about Kubernetes backup. Stateful workloads are a thing. Just go and rattle some drums and do your thing. Speak at some events and do this. And I was like, yeah, but do I agree that stateful work? Anyway, that's a different session. Whether stateful workloads deserve to live in Kubernetes or not, but it's happening and people are doing it. But in order for me to understand Kubernetes in that world, I had to immerse myself into this DevOps mindset, the process, the principles, all of that stuff that goes with that. So again, I'm very privileged that allows me to make that change, as it were. And the process was, I said it was a bit like, and I don't know how this is going to translate, but I said it was a bit like Swiss cheese. I think Swiss cheese is the one with loads of holes in. So if you think about my knowledge of DevOps going into this role of field CTO, technologist of cloud native for Veeam, a software house, I knew how to. I'd written my own Terraform stuff. I'd written my Ansible playbooks. I'd had that, but just because you know that doesn't mean that you know hardly anything. I've played with Linux for the last 20 years of my life, but even if you spend 900 days on Linux, you're not going to learn everything about Linux. So there was lots of gaps across the board, and this was a way in which I could be really focused. We were just coming out of lockdown, so travel wasn't really bad at the moment. So I had lots of time to focus on this. So I know, I appreciate that I'm not the same, like as a lot of other people that are in infrastructure roles now and they want to move into a developer or DevOps type role. I think my advice is just keep trying to move the little needle as much as you can in your day job. Like if you can automate something of your day away, you're only going to learn from that, and then the tasks get bigger and bigger, and you then become, oh, actually, I've automated myself either out of a role and I'm into something bigger. But you're going to learn so much along that way, and don't be scared of that change, because as we know in technology, all of us here, like technology is changing constantly, and if you don't like change, technology might not be the place to be because it's constantly changing. Or there's always different areas you can be in as well. Hopefully that helps, John.
That was a good explanation. It's small steps, right? Baby steps.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Crawl, walk, and run, as I like to call it. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
and then hit a wall. Yeah.
yeah, fall over, crash, whatever. Right? Like,
Yes, that's how we learn. Yeah, learn by doing and even failing also.
also, always.
And embracing it. Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's get into the good stuff.
Okay, yeah. So we've got our the repository. If you search for 90 Days of DevOps on your favorite search engine, you'll find some resemblance to this. And I wanted to kick off with like showing the GitHub, because that's where it started. There is if you go to 90daysofdevops.com, one of the community members, Rishab Kumar, works at Twilio at the moment, but he's contributed a massive amount into putting this into a GitHub pages, and it looks awesome. We need to finish 2023 to update it and bring that in, but that's a tomorrow problem. So kicking off, obviously this started in 2022, and there's been a bit of a move around here, but you can see here stars is incredible. 24,000 stars. In fact, if I hover over that, does that? Yeah, 24,000 stars. I think it's actually not far from 25 now. 6,000 forks, which means people have taken a copy of that. Whether that's them actually walking through the process themselves and documenting their own journey, or whether they've just taken a copy just as a point in time, is but equally incredible. There's a Discord that's going on. Personally, I'm not a Discord fan. Someone asked me to start one up. We've got nearly 1,500 people in there, but I would say it's probably the quietest Discord I've ever been in. But I open to discussion on how to make that more vibrant. And then we've got our 2022 where it started, and we've got 2023. So if we dive into 2023, you'll see at the top again. This blows my mind. So I mentioned earlier about people contributing to my awful spelling and grammar mistakes, but equally, there's people that have gone out of their way to translate this into their own language. So whether it be Vietnamese, Spanish, Polish, yeah, it's incredible. For like, this is my writing that is questionable at best. But yeah, someone somewhere wanted their version in their language. Again, this is about sharing in the community and enabling all of us to learn something. And the key part to why 90 Days of DevOps is, as we get down into the topics, it's all quite modular. So you can start off looking at what is and why do we use DevOps, some of the things that we've just been speaking about. What is the responsibility of a DevOps engineer? What does that life cycle look like? What does plan, code, build, test and release, deploy, operate and monitor actually mean? What's that infinity symbol actually mean when it comes to the DevOps application lifecycle? And we go into each of those. And then wrongly, rightly, this again goes back to that blog that I wrote back in October of 2021, was I started off learning a programming language as the top topic. Now, I know from some of my colleagues, they look at this and they go, why would I even start learning a programming language first? That's ridiculous. Like, I don't know half the things, and you're wanting me to go and learn Golang or Python. Yeah, probably a mistake in hindsight. But the beauty of this is that you can take these 7-day chunks and you can start wherever you feel necessary. Again, this isn't just this just started as my notes. And the reason, so I started talking about learning a programming language, and each of these sections, they start as the big picture. So what is DevOps and learning a programming language? Now, from a DevOps point of view, I would argue that, and this again depends on your background, is I would argue that you don't need to be a developer, but you need to be able to read the code and understand what's going on for the application that you're supporting the application developers for, so that you can make recommendations and give feedback on that as the best place where to run it, how could we improve this, etc. But you don't necessarily have to be a developer. But then that might be something that spurs this on. You might learn Golang and go, well, I really like this. I'm actually going to transition and be a Golang developer, an application developer around Golang. So what we did here was, so each of the sections will start off with the big picture. Then we go into either hands-on or a bit of theory. So I chose Golang. The reason why is because Casting K10 is written in Golang. I have zero programming language experience. Everyone told me that Golang was a good first language. So I jumped into that. There was a lot of conversations about Python. There wasn't any arguments. And actually in 2023, we cover that anyway. And in fact, that was Rashab as well doing that. So then we start with all code-based exercises. We get Hello World. We get our own little Hello World app up and running. But then we start looking at, actually, what could we build that is actually an application that's unique for us? So, and again, this was before the Twitter API got demolished by a certain someone. But this gives us the ability to tweet your progress via the app into using the Twitter API and some very simple Golang code. So this allowed us to at least put some functionality around a potential problem or a story. So that end to end, you start off with a big picture, a bit of theory, and then some hands-on is kind of the level of all of these sections. So Linux again, what's the big picture? And in particular, DevOps and Linux. Like, I'm not going to go into the Linux kernel, what that is, why we have so many Linux distributions. I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to get into things like the DevOps tooling that we use on a daily basis generally have been at least first written on a Linux platform, and with Linux file systems and everything in place. So again, it does that. We do a Nano versus Vim because clickbait allows us to do that around text editors. So we get into getting hands-on with some of this stuff. Again, if you've been an operator, then you've definitely touched on SSH and web servers and LAMP stack maybe as well. But again, you pick and choose your own journey for this. So then it was networking, cloud provider. This was an interesting one because I went out to Twitter and I asked, well, what cloud should I cover? Bearing in mind we're 28 days in now, because everyone else was like, oh, I'll come back to this when you finish the 90 days. I'm not gonna even look at this yet. But already at this point, it was starting to get that traction. So Azure won the race there very narrowly between AWS and even Google. And I was quite happy about it being Azure because I hadn't done much in Azure. And actually, coming from the infrastructure background, touching Azure over AWS, I found this was much more my people than, say, AWS, which is where I'd spent most of my time. I don't know if there's any talk track on that amongst everyone, but yeah, that's what I at least found.
It was the right choice, Michael. That's all I can say.
Yep.
Yes, I think so. We're surrounded by Azure people around today.
Yeah. Welcome to the blue side. Yeah.
I thought that's why I mentioned that. And then using Git and Git-based services such as GitHub. If we've got a lot of Microsoft fans, then it's worth mentioning that as well. But equally around, like to Kev's point before, just learning Git. And Git isn't necessarily complex, but it absolutely can be. Like, you could lose your code in seconds. Like, if you put the wrong thing in, you could. We should do a session on how to lose your code in Git, because that is real. And Git has been around for years as well, but it should be a fundamental skill that all of us should have. Then you start looking into like containers, Kubernetes, learning infrastructure as code, then configuration management. I chose Ansible in there, but there's others as well. I've done in a previous world, I've done a lot of work around Chef and Chef cookbooks and Ruby, and the less said about that, the better. But again, all of this gives me a good foundation to at least talk about some of this stuff. And don't get me wrong, you're not going to learn DevOps in 90 days by going through this topic, but it's going to give you a better understanding of what it was and what some of this terminology is than if you didn't go through it. And sometimes 90 days is a little bit more consumable than, oh, you got to spend 6 months or 12 months or a couple of years learning this stuff. This is going to give you a grounding. It's going to give you a foundation. So CI/CD pipelines, biggest bugbear is that they're together. CI and CD, they don't need to be. Continuous integration, continuous deployment, they can be separate. I would argue that they should be separate, but that's probably another topic for another time. Then you've got monitoring, log management. This is normally where it comes up in the cool factor as well. Observability, storing and protecting your data. It's normally at the bottom of the list. We get to it last. I know, because I'm talking to people about this every day, so I can casually say that. But again, I feel that cloud native is almost demanding that we have to know a lot more about observability, as well as that storing and hosting your data, if you will. That data management story is becoming a top of mind thing, especially when we see the security, the cyber threats that we have out there in the world around ransomware and cyber threats. I think having visibility of that, as well as having the last line of defense from a backup perspective, is a huge topic at the moment. So that was 90 days. Like I mentioned, yeah, I stuck with getting this done in those 90 days as well, and then did a few talks, got invited to do a few keynotes because of it. But yeah, so was there any questions, Robin, that came in during showing that at all?
No questions.
All I can say is I'm going to take a look at this because I'm looking at it going,
Oh yeah.
I don't know that. I don't know that. Right? So
Yeah, me too. Some parts of it I will go through.
yeah.
Yes.
But it's, you know,
comprehensive, right?
What's really important is that you understand the principles and the fundamentals and not necessarily focus on one tool, right? Because you cannot really dictate what the tools are going to be in the job that you might not yet have, right? So if you join a new company, it could be that they suddenly work with GitLab. But if you understand, you know, what is CI, what is CD, you know, DevSecOps, what is the preferable outcome, then you just have to get used to the new tool, but you know the principles already.
Yeah, exactly that. And that was kind of why I said stick to one cloud provider, because if we go and look into, just to give you a sneak of like one of the topics, is the big picture of DevOps and cloud. You exactly don't know what the best cloud is unless you know all of them. So let's just focus on one, the one that your company uses. And I think I actually say that here. If your company is using Azure, use Azure. If your company is doing AWS, go and learn that. For you to go and learn something completely different to what your current company is using is potentially going to be detrimental to your learning anyway, because you're not going to get the same response, like the same feedback from that. So you'll see through here, there's a lot of slides. If I go through, it kind of talks about like DevOps on the cloud. We talk about the big three a lot. We talk about AWS, we talk about Azure, we talk about Google, but we could go, and this is UK because I'm based in the UK. You've got UK Fast, you've got Node 4, then you've got your likes of iLand, AT&T. You've got other cloud providers that you could go and spin up virtual machines and do all of this same stuff, or maybe some of that stuff. And it's important to know the size of infrastructure, the amount of services they have available, and it doesn't always have to equal the big three always. So it talks about, and hopefully everyone's seen like the pizza menu, pizza as a service, where you go, okay, on premises, I'm in charge of everything. I'm going to keep the hardware. I've got to keep everything safe. It's all my responsibility. The electricity coming into the building, everything is on me. Whereas when you start going into the cloud and you start going to IaaS or infrastructure infrastructure as a service, then you start offloading some of that responsibility, the cooling, the power, even the servers. I don't really care. I just give me a Windows server that I can use for this, and I want this memory, blah, blah, blah. Then you can go one step further and you start using something like database as a service. And again, you're offloading a lot more of that. And then you go SaaS and it's like offloading even more of that. But you'll probably inherit some more managerial admin type tasks, thinking of like Microsoft 365, for example. You don't just buy Microsoft 365 and go, oh, happy days, I don't have to worry about Exchange anymore, and I don't have to worry about that. You have to now worry about accessibility and all of that stuff within there, that you become a Microsoft 365 admin per se, about what that needs to look like. And that was the tweet on that. So yeah, then we go into like, well, okay, so what's the Azure fundamentals look like? So that was the actual finished tweet. That's where I was saying. So on the other one, it was not a completed Twitter poll. This one's the final result. So you can see just over 40% of the 149 people wanted to see Azure. So I gave the community what they wanted, and went after Azure. So I was literally talking about regions, and again, all of this is cross. To your point, Robin, everything you learn, if you learn Azure, you can quite easily transfer that over to the other clouds or even the smaller like MSPs as well. But you'll see through here lots of different slides, images, etc. that I've used for my notes that hopefully help someone else. But then I've equally got hands-on in my Azure subscription and started painting my own picture on that as well and building stuff out. Probably all still there, probably costing me money now, but here we are. And you can go through this like each day, and then at the end of it, it will have, so each of the days, like I mentioned, you've got the big picture, you've got a scenario, you've got a theory, then you've got some scenarios, and you get hands-on and all that good stuff. But on each of the days, so 90 days, you've got, trust me to pick the longest one to get down to. You've got this resources section, and these are links to YouTube videos, much smarter people than me that go through this stuff. So if what I've said is not enough and you want to go and learn more, then get yourself on YouTube. Again, it's free, it's accessible, and you can get access to that. So there's a lot of links to different resources all the way through.
Do you know what I like about this? And it's a big thing for me. It's all free. So you're lowering the barriers, right, for people to get access to learning, right? So that's a big win.
Yes, agree. I like that.
Yeah, exactly that. And someone actually asked me, like, why don't you sell it to like a I've got to be careful, I can't use the name, but you could sell it to one of the big cloud educators, and you could, but then it removes all the premise of what I built it for. It was one, it was meant to be my notes, and two, why can't it be free? Like, I'm in a privileged position where Veeam are more than happy to pay for me at the moment to do stuff like this. So I'm happy for this to be a community resource, and even more so with what we've done and how we've, like, it's not just me giving my perspective now. It's gone to the community, and then there's going to be 90 sessions come 2024. Now, is that enough? Then we'll see, because I've had quite a lot of submissions to the call for papers. So it's like, whether do we just put a line in the sand and call it a day and maybe work on just keeping things updated, or is there a continuation? Because there's new tools coming out all the time, and different focus areas as well. So we'll see on what. Like, I'm not tied to anything, because no one's bought it. It's a free resource. So I wrote, I can't remember when, but I wrote a small Go program that would go through all of the pages, all the markdown in my GitHub repo, and spit out all of these resources. So if you didn't want to go through any of it, you could go through just like this page and get all of the YouTube channel or the YouTube links, and that's not a bad resource in itself, right? If I actually put down what is DevOps, and then we get to day 7, and then we start to look at developer languages and stuff like that. So that was just another little tinker that I did in there. I guess just to bring it up to like where we are from this year. So I think the key part to 2023 was the big area that was missing from 2022 was we didn't talk about security. And I would like to say that was by design, but equally, I think anything in 2021, 2022 was probably missing security. You missed it out because security is hard. So what we did in 2023 was took a look at DevSecOps. To your point, Jonah, you mentioned about DevSecOps. You even mentioned about secure coding. What does that continuous build, integration, testing look like? CD, continuous delivery. What does that look like? So you can see as well, these are friends in the community, whether it's Anton, Ben from Armo, like much better perspectives than me giving that perspective in a world that I don't know. So it was about asking these SMEs in the community, well, will you give 7 days worth of time to write 7 blogs basically on your topic? Obviously, we could have done probably all of the whole section on DevSecOps, but equally, I knew there was things that we missed out on in the first one around things like Python, AWS as a cloud, OpenShift, databases, serverless, service mesh. And then the interesting one to finish that off was from Alistair, was around engineering for day 2 ops. What is that? Well, it's all well and good us building stuff, but what happens day 2 or day 22? How do we keep evolving? How do we keep that iteration and innovation happening? So yeah, some names in there. And then again, similar format. We went through the big picture. I actually give a reflection on 2023, basically saying all of what we said at the start around translations, people fixing my grammar and spelling, all of that good stuff. And then, yeah, we got a bit of an overview of each of these, which, again, like people haven't shied away from getting their hands dirty here. That there's some examples. In fact, Anton did I did it, and then Anton picked it up. So in DevSecOps, I built a very weak app, obviously against all worst practice. Like you want to build something in VirtualBox using Vagrant. We're going to build a MariaDB server, all of that stuff. But basically, I'm not looking for any dependencies. I'm not looking for any vulnerabilities. I'm not doing anything. I'm just spinning stuff up. So we create that app using Ruby on Rails. Again, PTSD. Can't stay on that page very long. Yeah, basically we've got a bad. Where is the attack? I attack it. Yeah, we basically leave an exposed virtual machine out, and then that's where Anton comes in here or here. Yeah, it's here, and takes that same app and then progresses on that. But this whole point was it's very easy to build a weak app. It's very easy to implement something that isn't very secure. Much easier than it is to implement something secure. So, yeah, the last 2 days are the 40 and 41 around secrets management that I still have to figure out and fix. But yeah, we took a look at, so Dean Lewis, who's now at Isovalent, moved from VMware to Isovalent. He's very deep on OpenShift from Red Hat. So he went through that. But databases, so this was, there was 2 people. It's Taylor and Andrew Prusky, both like renowned speakers on that data circuit, talking about databases. I would love to extend this out and start talking about vector databases because that's the cool thing now with AI and stuff. But yeah, you can see Marino did some awesome stuff on service mesh. He talks about all the open source. Again, he works for Solo, but there's no, like, he doesn't hint towards Solo at all. He talks about all of them. He talks about everything that he uses as well as the others that are available. So he's not specific. He says like glue mesh is what he talks about every day, but he talks about everything. So it's very open. It's not, it's not gaining anyone's like day job, I guess, is the point.
It's neutral, right? So it's very cloud native, right? In terms of where the information or the perspective's coming from, right? To try and keep an open mind.
Yeah, very agnostic. Now, like he then went off and actually started a night. Did he do 90 days or 70 days of service mesh? Like, I don't know how he's getting on with
How'd
that.
you do that?
Yeah, that guy's on a plane more than me. So yeah, but so he, and if that's what this encourages, if people can learn from it, great. But if people have ideas around like taking it to do like to weave it into their like 90, someone else mentioned 90 days of GitOps, have at it. Like, that'd be brilliant. And if that's what we've created here as this is a template moving forward of how we're going to learn, like, I would love to find the time to actually put together 90 videos to cover each of these days for each year as well. I think that would be a powerful way of being able to, because as much as this is all written content, I actually consume most of my content through YouTube now. So, yeah, it'd be video content would get a bigger audience as well.
For like audio visual learners as well, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But this has 24K stars already, right? So
Oh,
imagine if you synthesize
Yeah.
this into video content and add that into the mix. But this is a gold mine, man. I'm also gonna go through it, and I will probably learn a lot by
Yeah.
even looking at the big picture, right? Like, okay, just how do you say that? Reactivate certain pathways that may lie dormant, right? And then learn a thing or two. Awesome.
Yes. I think I'm gonna add this in my book before it gets printed next month.
Well,
I
thank
think
you.
so. I have a section in my book, Learning Microsoft Azure, that I'm writing with O'Reilly, and I really don't really want to miss DevOps. So I am gonna add this last minute on my final draft. Michael, I think is a really good content for those getting started with DevOps, and even us that have already been in the industry for a while.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And then I guess that leads me on to the final plug is around what we're doing in 90 days. What we're doing for 2024 is a call for speakers. So this is all going to be hosted online. It's all going to be on the YouTube channel. And we're going to run it from January the 1st to March the 31st. Now, for those that are keen leap year fans, you'll know that 2024 is actually a leap year as well. So that actually messes up my 90 days because it will be 91 days. But don't worry, I've got there's a potential surprise in there as well. But ultimately, this is going to run for them 90 days. We're looking for 90 sessions. I think I've probably accepted 45 maybe out of all the submissions. I have a lot. But I would love that diversity of sessions as well. Like, Jonah, I'd love for you to come on and speak about your book. I think I DM'd you and asked that as well. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of viewers on here that could also bring in their perspective around whether it's cloud, whether it's tooling, and all of that good stuff. There's a lot of detail on there as well. I use ChatGPT, to be fair, on
I do.
the wording.
Everything. It makes you look professional, right? So
But maybe you need to add your friends from GitHub, your followers, to proofread the grammar.
There you go. Yeah,
This one, like you did on your repo.
Yeah, and I think the key, like I mentioned, it's virtual, and we're looking for sessions that are 10, 30 minutes, that consumable amount
right.
of session that we can all jump on every day throughout January, February, March, and hopefully we all learn something as well. One thing I found from the 2023 edition is that reading other people's perspective and walking through that is such a great way of learning. Like, that hands-on experience, like we all know, like we're all people that probably learn best by doing. And it just cemented that massively in that 2023. So if we can bring that video format out and make it work, then I think there'll be 90 awesome sessions to look back over.
This is really great stuff. And
Yes.
is there a way for me to try to see what sessions you already accepted, so I'm not submitting anything that's already covered?
There isn't at the moment, but you're not the first person to ask. So I'm
All right.
going to think of a way of being able to expose that list. Maybe what I do is, to keep everything in one place, I have created a 2024 folder, and each video will get their own day as well. So if you've got any lab notes or anything that you wanted to add in there, but maybe I haven't put a 2024 read. I did. Maybe what I'll do is, this is just what I need to do is I need to start putting those 45 into these buckets. So leave it with me. I'll try and get to it in between other stuff. But yeah, I think that'd be super useful.
Awesome.
That's great.
Kev, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
this was amazing, Michael. I've seen you on and off of Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days, right? Over the past couple of years.
Still Twitter.
It's always going to be Twitter to me, right?
Yeah.
But
Twitter X.
Twitter, well, yeah, X Twitter, whatever you want to call it, right? But this is an amazing resource. I'm half tempted to put a submission for a talk, but I need to go through because I was looking through that list and there was quite a lot of smart people on there, right? So you've done a really good job of getting the breadth and the depth of the community on there, right? Of being involved. So I think that, round of applause, please, Robin. Like, there's a lot of work going on here.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, just wanted to thank you for coming on the show, making time. Thanks to Jonah.
Yes.
Not
Thanks.
your first session with us, but many more to come, right? So really happy that you're here.
Yeah.
And then
Glad to be here.
And then, as always, the maestro in the background, Dr. Dre, as I like to call him. We've got Robin Small in there, right?
The DJ.
Making the magic happen, right? So
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
It's
very
a team
much.
effort, right? So
Yes. And I'm
thanks for the
also
props, man.
happy to finally meet Michael also live moving. We did had a chat or DM on Twitter or X so about this as well. So thank you.
Yes,
great
awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Yes, and thank you
Absolutely.
to those that watch us also and spend time with us. We really appreciate your time this evening or morning, wherever you are. So hope to see you next time.
Okay.
And with that, thanks for watching. Don't be a
Thank you.
stranger. See you guys next time.
Yes.
Cheers.